After a long offseason, week one is officially here. Guys, we made it. To help us break down one of the biggest games on Saturday are our friends Jordan Hill from Dawgs247 and Austin Hannon from Clemson247. You can guess which game we're going to break down. That is Georgia and Clemson in Atlanta. Let's go ahead and show you this matchup because they've played this game before. The Dogs won the last meeting between these two teams back in 2021 on their way to their first national title in 41 years. Now, Georgia walks into this one as the #1 team in the nation, but not so fast. Clemson has won 2 of their last 3 meetings against top-ranked teams. Let's start off by talking quarterbacks, guys. Austin, what steps do you need to see Cade Klubnik take in his second year as a starter?
Yeah, that's the big question this offseason. It's a huge season for Cade Klubnik. Obviously, the fans, the first time they got to see him in action was that, ACC championship against North Carolina a couple years ago. He won the MVP of the game, and that kind of forced, DJ out of town. And then so he took the reins last year, and the expectation was Garrett Riley was just going to come in and things were just going to work out on offense. And that's not the way it went, obviously, starting week one. So steps for him this year, he's got to be a better decision maker. He looked a little bit flustered in the pocket at times his first 2 years. He's got to make the easy throws. Sometimes it seems like he tried to do a little bit too much when things were there for him. And then, like you said, it's year 2 in the system. We've seen quarterbacks in the past, and I think Greg McElroy made a great point on ESPN the other day. He'll actually be doing the game this weekend, saying, we've seen this before. Like, you can't really throw away what a guy's done through 1 year with an offense coordinator because there's just so much you have to learn in terms of making checks and reads and really just learning how to become a better college football quarterback. It's not that easy. Some guys can do it as a freshman. Some guys can't. So I think that's huge. He's got a lot more weapons this year, at least right now, that are healthy. So that's another big step in the right direction. And I think a lot of Clemson fans want to see him use his legs a little more this year. I mean, this is a guy that's very athletic. He did it a lot in high school, out in Texas, and he really hasn't been a runner as much in the offense as we kind of would expect. So I think those are a lot of things that he's worked on and has gotten better at. And, of course, the leadership thing's huge for a quarterback, too. So winning that team over, I think he's done that this offseason. Swinney said multiple times that he's taken the steps they want him to. It's just about putting it together on game day now.
Yeah, on the other side, Carson Beck has a few more years on Cade Klubnik, but it's his second year as the true starter, too. So how has he managed those increased expectations as he heads into the season?
Well, I think Carson understands that he's got a real opportunity this season. And I think based on everything we've heard from Carson, from Kirby Smart, from his other coaches, from his teammates, that he's taken it really seriously. I think that Carson not only has done a good job this offseason of really honing in on his deep ball, which I would say is very clearly the weakest part of his game, but also just stepping up as a leader. And Carson was really candid with us back in the spring saying, I didn't really feel comfortable speaking up last year. It's my first year as a starter. I'm kind of learning as I go. He said it's not really an issue this year. And he's talked about, earlier this week getting ready for this Clemson game, being able to help his teammates, being able to help the defense, being able to help everybody around him. I think Carson understands that there are a lot of expectations, not only on himself, but also on this team. And, talking to him back at SEC Media Days, he made it clear that he doesn't really get caught up in the outside noise. He knows that he's a Heisman favorite going into the season, but he understands that, that doesn't mean a whole lot if the team doesn't go out there and doesn't take care of business. So Carson understands that he's got a big opportunity, that the bar is really high, but he knew that when he first signed with Georgia. He stuck around, and I think he's looking to make the most of it this season.
All right, so we started with quarterbacks, which I know everybody wants to hear about, but for both of these programs, the lines of scrimmage are so important and really a calling card for both of these teams. So I'll start with you, Jordan. From your point of view, how do these teams stack up on the lines of scrimmage?
Well, I think if you look from the Georgia offensive line versus the Clemson defensive line, to me, that's the battle to watch because Georgia feels really good about its offensive line. Got 4 of 5 starters back from last season. And the one new starter is center Jared Wilson, who we're hearing about him being a total freak athlete at the center position. I mean, Kirby Smart, I don't know if he's backed this up, but he said he's faster than some of the DBs. I'd have to see the numbers on that one. But no, and then you look on the Clemson side with some of the defensive linemen, particularly some of those young guys, TJ Parker, Peter Woods. I think that's a battle to watch. But honestly, what intrigues me probably more than that is on the other side, Georgia's defensive line, to me, is the biggest question mark of this entire team. And then they go through fall camp, and Jordan Hall gets hurt. Warren Brinson's been banged up, though they expect him to be back. They need guys to step up alongside Nazir Stackhouse. And you're playing a Clemson offensive line that's really experienced. And just to add to it, Matt Luke's leading that group, and he was at Georgia for a couple of years. So everyone, I think, is going to pay attention to the Georgia offensive line, Clemson defensive line. Don't lose track of what it looks like on the other side of the ball. I think that's going to be a very important battle as well.
Yeah, it looks like Jordan did his homework. He knows kind of what's coming up front there. I think based off what he said, the same thing. These are two programs that over the years, especially on the defensive line, these are two programs that is where their strength has been. And I don't think for Clemson, it's really that different this year. Like Jordan mentioned, Peter Woods back for his sophomore year. Same for TJ Parker. I think the concern with them is can they continue it, right? They were great as freshmen. They got in there due to injuries, due to guys leaving, and they played great football, but can they do it as sophomores now? Because we all know about the sophomore slump. DeMonte Capehart, not a guy that's been talked about a lot this offseason, but he's going to be starting at defensive tackle because Clemson moved Peter Woods out to edge at 320 pounds, which sounds crazy on paper, but I've seen this guy in practice. He does not look like he's 320 pounds. This guy's a game wrecker, and he's going to be giving Georgia all it can handle up front. But just like Georgia, Clemson's got a little bit of a question mark at center. Right now, Ryan Linthicum is the projected starter there, but there's kind of been a battle after Will Putnam exited the team after last season. And, of course, Nazir Stackhouse is going to be lined up straight across from him. So that's quite your first matchup to start the season if you got a question mark at center is playing a guy like that that's been around that Georgia program for so long. But like Jordan said, I think Clemson is very confident in the other four guys on that offensive line, which is Tristan Lay out at left tackle, Blake Miller at right tackle, and then you've got Walker Parks and Marcus Tate on the inside at guard. So, and like you mentioned, Matt Luke, this is really his second game. He got to coach in that bowl game last December, but returning to the sport, he's really talked about in a positive way by everybody that knows him, all the players that have played for him. So I think Clemson's looking in the right direction on the offensive line.
See, this is why we talk about it with this matchup. Yeah, they're not quarterbacks, but both of you laid out just the freaky athletes that are on both sides, both lines of scrimmage that we're going to see in this matchup, and that could be a big difference in this game. Austin, there will be the second longest underdog spread under Dabo at plus 13.5. I know that the coach is well aware of that stat. That's the type of thing that he keeps track of for sure. But the reason I'm saying it is because this is the longest in 12 years. So beside just winning this game outright, what can Clemson do to, make fans and the general college football public feel better about the trajectory of this program in this game?
Yeah, I think this game kind of sets up nicely for them, but at the same time, it can also be one that, if things don't go well and you play like Georgia did, against like Oregon did against Georgia a few years ago in that stadium, you don't feel good. And so it's more of a barometer game, I think, for Clemson. Obviously, not a lot of people in the national sphere, the people that turn their TV on Saturday are going to say Clemson's going to win this game. But if they can hang around, keep it a one-score game, show a little bit more explosivity on offense, hold its own up front against a team like Georgia, and most importantly, something they didn't do the last 2 years is protect the football on offense. If they can do those things and show that maybe they can hang around with a team like Georgia in week one for 3 or 4 quarters, I think that's going to have the fans feeling great about how the rest of the season can go. Obviously, last weekend after Florida State lost, Clemson, I believe, is the odds-on favorite to win the ACC at this point. So if they can go out and show that they've made strides over the offseason and they can look more like that team that fans got accustomed to for that 6 straight years of playoff appearances, then this could shape up to be a good season. And if you don't do those things and you turn the ball over and you get dominated up front by Georgia, then it's going to be a lot of the same old from the national audience.
Yeah, no moral victories necessarily, but this thing can go horribly wrong or perfectly right. And we'll see what happens in this game. That's why we play it. That's why we're so excited. Finally, real football. Jordan, I have to ask, because there's been a lot of speculation with a suspension or no suspension. So can you tell us what you know about the status of running back Trevor Etienne?
Well, Emily, that's the million-dollar question going into Saturday. It's something that Kirby Smart hasn't talked about. He was asked multiple times on Monday about Etienne's status. Again, this goes back to a March arrest that included charges of DUI. That case was resolved, but obviously that was still a very serious situation. Again, I think it's going to be a situation that leads all the way up to Saturday, and it's going to be us trying to piece together if he's warming up. I wouldn't be surprised if he warms up and still doesn't wind up playing. So I think that We don't have a clear answer yet. I haven't gotten confirmation from anyone that a decision has even been made. But if I were to make a prediction, I would be surprised if we see Trevor Etienne. But again, just a prediction, and we've got several days left before this game is played. We'll just have to keep watching it. And again, probably be out there with binoculars seeing if number one is warming up and if he ever takes the field once this game gets going.
What's the plan if he doesn't go?
Well, it's a big question because not only is he up in the air, but Roderick Robinson, another running back who probably would have started if Trevor Etienne didn't play, had toe surgery last week, and he's out for the foreseeable future. Kirby Smart said he's week to week. So this could wind up being an outstanding story where Branson Robinson, a guy who tore his patellar tendon in fall camp last August, makes his return and gets the start and gets probably the lion's share of the carries. So it's definitely a big question mark if they don't have Trevor Etienne. And they do have options. Branson Robinson, Nate Frazier, a true freshman, has really impressed. But if they don't have Trevor Etienne, that's going to be a significant blow to this Georgia offense.
Yeah, based on history, you tend to not worry too much about the running back position at Georgia. But the way you laid it out, it's going to be interesting to see what happens on Saturday. I said we were excited about real football, but we got a little eager here at 247 Sports. So, guys, we actually simulated this game 20 times on EA College Football 25, and Clemson finished with 11 wins to Georgia's 9, which means that that's exactly what's going to happen on Saturday because video game is real life. But so for each team, though, let's just go ahead and lay out, starting with Austin. What is the biggest key to victory in this very real game?
Yeah, those highlights are showing them playing at Sanford Stadium. So, I mean, that's even more impressive that Clemson was able to go into a true road game and win that. The keys to victory are pretty simple. I laid it out in a piece last week. I think they got to do the little things well, and coaches harp on that kind of stuff all the time. But this is when you have to punt, make good punts. When you have to kick a field goal, make your field goals. Do those little things because you can't beat a team like Georgia if you don't. And I think maybe the most important thing is winning that turnover battle. Those last two losses Georgia had to Alabama, I believe they lost the turnover battle in both of them, and made a couple uncharacteristic turnovers late in games that sealed wins for Alabama in those SEC championships. And I think Phil Mafah's got to have a huge game because we've talked about Cade Klubnik on here, but you can't really pass the ball well if you can't open up a running game. And Georgia's obviously tough up front, but Phil Mafah's going to be one of the best backs they see all year defensively. So I think those are three. And then, of course, I just mentioned him again, but Cade Klubnik's the big answer here. He's got to keep that Georgia defense honest. He's got to make the short throws. He's got to take a couple shots. And like I said, I really think he needs to try to use his legs to his advantage as much as he can because we've seen in the past, defenses from Kirby Smart and Nick Saban, they've struggled at times with a quarterback that can maybe hurt them with the legs a little bit. So if you can keep that defense honest, don't give in to what they're good at and let them blitz you. And when you're in for sure passing situations in 3rd and long, because things could get pretty ugly there.
Looking from the Georgia perspective, I mean, Austin hit on it. The turnover margin is going to be huge. And for me, I'm going to be watching this Georgia secondary. They're breaking in 3 new starters. They lost 3 guys that are in the NFL right now, and a couple of them really impressing. So I think that it's going to come down to if Clemson is going to make this game close or outright win it, I think Cade Klubnik's got to have a big day. So the Georgia secondary's got to show up ready to play. If there's opportunities to make and force turnovers, they have to take advantage. You look at Cade Klubnik last year, he averaged an interception per game when they played ranked opponents. So I think that's huge. And this Georgia secondary, again, got guys that have proven themselves really well. Malachi Starks, an All-American. Dalen Everett, who had an up-and-down first year as a starter, but really came through toward the end and I thought had an outstanding offseason. I think that they understand that there's big questions about the secondary, but they've got the talent. Cade Klubnik's going to test them. They got to show that they're ready for it.
I am ready for this game. That is an understatement. Thank you both for breaking it down for us. You can catch up with their coverage on Dawgs247. That's for all things Georgia football. And, of course, Clemson 24/7 for everything that you need to know about the Clemson Tigers. These 2 writers and their whole crew have you covered all season long.